What's up, Sneak Peekers? I'm Nick Flores. There have been lots of video game adaptations recently, but none more popular or acclaimed than The Last of Us, based on the PlayStation game of the same name, which is now almost halfway through its first season. There are always challenges in the process of adaptation, but video games as a medium are notoriously difficult to adapt, and there are plenty of differences between The Last of Us game and show.
Hey everyone, I'm Reese from Video Game Hour Live. Tonight, Nick and I will be listing several ways in which the HBO show differs from the source material, why these changes might have been necessary, and whether or not they were successful.
One change that's been very obvious is a substantial lack of violence. In the game, you have to protect yourself from a myriad of enemies, including the infected, Fedra, hunters, and more. The showrunners, The Last of Us game creator Neil Druckmann and Chernobyl showrunner Craig Mazin, have stated that they hope the comparative lack of violence in the show would increase the overall impact of the violence by not desensitizing the audiences by having the show be too gory. Without the need for emulating the game's third-person shooter experience, the show has more time to spend with its characters and the incredible performances it has, especially Pedro Pascal's as the lead, Joel Miller. Personally, as big of a fan as I am of the gruesome violence in both Last of Us games, I'm extremely happy to see that we're getting more personal moments for Joel and Ellie as opposed to unnecessary combat. I think Pedro and Bella are doing an amazing job embodying their roles so far.
While both the game and the show share the same premise of fungal infection, there are some small changes they made in how the infection is spread. In the game, the infected spread themselves through an airborne route through spores, causing our characters to use gas masks. However, the show so far has the disease transmittable through entering your blood, so you can only catch it from being bitten by an infected or eating some rather fungal bread. That's not to say these zombies have been nerfed though, as the airborne spores have been traded for a hive mind of cordyceps, which can run for miles and connects all infected. I think these changes work a lot better for cinematic adaptations where characters aren't performing through gas masks for long stretches, and the hive mind adds a further interesting and scary dynamic.
I think the most obvious difference storytelling-wise is how world-building information is delivered. In video games, you're typically told side stories through small environmental details, which can expand the world you found yourself in through the collection of all these notes and tapes in any given level. But in games, these are optional, and if you just want to speedrun through guns blazing, no one can stop you. In television, however, you don't get that same agency, so the showrunners create these vignettes that allow the world to flourish, from the eerie 70s talk show prologue about the deadly pandemics, to the first discovery of the mutated cordyceps, and the love story between Bill and Frank and how their relationship braved the apocalypse, all of which is optional information in the game.
Like Nick mentioned, this allows for non-playable characters to be fully realized. More screen time is given to important characters like Tess and Tommy, and side characters we wish we spent more time with like Bill and Frank. But even further, this means giving a breath of life into nameless enemies you'd fight in the games who now have family, friends, and a leader who they follow and support. This characterization of enemies as people just trying to survive in an infected world without good and evil wasn't really prevalent in the first game, although it was in The Last of Us Part 2, which the show surely took inspiration from. I think this change in the show gives a real sense of depth in both the infected world and the people living in it, and that feels uniquely cinematic and enhances the thematic material.
And with that, we'll conclude our segment on what we've seen so far of The Last of Us. While the story is undoubtedly faithful to the original work, the obvious changes enable us to explore how stories can be told in different ways when being adapted from one medium to another. Thank you, Reese, for joining us here at Sneak Peek to talk about the show.
My pleasure. If you want to hear more about The Last of Us and many other games, check out Video Game Hour Live on WatchTSTV.com Thursdays at 9 p.m.